Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine when someone you trusted smiled at you, yet something deep within whispered that all was not as it seemed? There's a reason for that ancient knowing, that primal recognition your soul makes when it encounters something wearing a human mask, but operating with an agenda far removed from love. Type "I see them" in the comments if you've ever felt this unsettling recognition, and smash that like button, because what I'm about to reveal has been hidden from humanity for 2,000 years. Tonight, we're pulling back the veil on one of the most controversial and suppressed teachings that Jesus shared only with his chosen ones, a teaching so dangerous, so revealing, that it was systematically removed from the canonical texts. This isn't about religion. This isn't about blind faith. This is about spiritual warfare happening right now, in your living room, at your dinner table, within your own family. Jesus didn't just teach his disciples to heal the sick and raise the dead. He taught them something far more practical, far more immediate: how to identify the Archons, those parasitic entities that attach themselves to the people closest to you, feeding off your light, your energy, your very divine essence. And here's what they don't want you to know. These Archons can't fully hide themselves. They leave traces. They reveal themselves through 5 unmistakable signs that, once you learn to recognize them, you'll never be fooled again. For centuries, the Gnostic texts that contained this knowledge were buried, burned, and branded as heresy. But in 1945, in the desert caves of Nag Hammadi, these secrets emerged from the sand, and now they're emerging into your awareness. By the end of this video, you'll possess the same discernment Jesus gave his inner circle, the ability to see beyond the flesh, beyond the smile, beyond the family ties, and into the true nature of the force operating through those around you. In the winter of 1945, an Egyptian farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman struck his mattock against a sealed jar buried in the cliffs near Nag Hammadi. Inside that ancient vessel lay 13 leather-bound codices, 52 texts that the early church fathers had deemed too dangerous for human eyes. Among these forbidden gospels was the Apocryphon of John, a text that records a private teaching Jesus gave to his beloved disciple, revealing the architecture of reality itself and the entities that govern the lower realms of existence. The early Christians knew these texts well. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries, Gnostic communities throughout Egypt, Syria, and Asia Minor studied Jesus' secret teachings about the Archons, a word derived from the Greek archon, meaning ruler or authority. But these weren't the authorities of Rome or Jerusalem. These were the invisible principalities and powers that the Apostle Paul cryptically warned about in Ephesians when he wrote, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." The Gnostics understood what mainstream Christianity forgot: that Jesus was teaching a form of spiritual discernment so precise, so sophisticated, that it allowed his followers to navigate a world infiltrated by non-human intelligences. These Archons, according to the testimony of John, are the creation of a false god, the demiurge, who fashioned the material world as a prison for divine sparks of consciousness. Humanity, in this cosmology, are fragments of the true God trapped in matter, and the Archons serve as prison guards, ensuring we never remember who we really are. But here's where the teaching becomes intensely personal and practical. The Archons don't simply exist in some distant astral realm. They attach themselves to human beings, especially those closest to the awakening souls, the chosen ones who carry that divine spark most brightly. They work through your spouse, your parents, your children, your dearest friends, not because these people are evil, but because the Archons are parasitic by nature. They require a host. They need proximity to light in order to feed. The Gospel of Philip, another Nag Hammadi text, describes how the Archons cannot approach the awakened one directly, so they use those bound by blood and affection as camouflage. It states, "The powers do not see those who are clothed in the perfect light, and consequently are not able to detain them. One will clothe himself in this light sacramentally." The Archons, you see, cannot penetrate true gnosis, true knowing, but they can manipulate the unaware, positioning them as obstacles, energy drains, and spiritual saboteurs in the path of the awakening soul. Jesus taught his chosen ones to recognize these infiltrations through behavioral signatures, energetic patterns that the Archons cannot fully suppress. In the secret book of John, Jesus explains to his disciple that the Archons operate through counterfeit spirit, creating imitations of love, joy, and connection that feel hollow at their core. They mimic human emotion, but cannot generate the authentic frequency of divine love. This is why the early church suppressed these teachings. If people knew how to identify archonic influence in their own families, they would become ungovernable. They would stop sacrificing their light to energy vampires wearing familiar faces. They would break free from the soul contracts and karmic entanglements that keep them bound to the matrix of control. By the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine consolidated Christianity into a state religion, these texts were condemned, their teachers persecuted, and their wisdom driven underground. Until now. The first sign Jesus taught his inner circle to recognize is what the ancient texts call the reversal of joy. Picture this. You've just received incredible news, a promotion, a creative breakthrough, a moment of genuine spiritual awakening. Your heart is soaring, and naturally, you want to share this expansion with those you love. But watch carefully what happens next. When you tell certain people in your life about your victory, something strange occurs. Instead of reflecting your joy back to you, amplifying it the way true love does, you feel it drain away. Their smile doesn't reach their eyes. Their congratulations feel like cardboard. They might say the right words, but the energy behind those words carries the weight of resentment, envy, or something even more disturbing, a subtle pleasure in seeing you smaller. This is not human jealousy, though it wears that mask. The Archons feed on louche, emotional energy, particularly the energy of diminishment. When you share your light, and instead of receiving celebration, you receive this peculiar dampening effect, you're witnessing an Archonic signature. The entity operating through that person literally cannot sustain the frequency of genuine joy for another's success, because it exists in a perpetual state of lack. In the Pistis Sophia, another Gnostic text, Jesus explains that the Archons were created from envy itself, from the demiurge's jealousy of the true God's creative power. They are constitutionally incapable of celebrating expansion because they are agents of contraction. The second sign is what I call the conversation loop of nowhere. Have you ever noticed that with certain people, no matter how many times you speak, the conversation never actually progresses? You could have the same discussion today that you had 5 years ago, and nothing has moved. It's as if you're talking to a recording, a program running the same script endlessly. Jesus warned his disciples in the Gospel of Thomas, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you." The Archons operate through stagnation. They keep souls locked in repetitive patterns, circular thinking, and behavioral loops that prevent evolution. When you're speaking to someone under Archonic influence, you'll notice they cannot engage with new ideas that threaten their programmed reality. They deflect, they derail, they bring every conversation back to safe, low-frequency topics, gossip, complaints, fear-based scenarios. Try to discuss spiritual awakening, higher consciousness, or breaking free from societal conditioning, and watch how quickly the subject changes. It's not that the person is consciously avoiding growth. It's that the entity attached to them recognizes these conversations as existential threats to its food source. If the host awakens, the parasite loses its dwelling place. The third sign is perhaps the most unsettling: the mirroring malfunction. In healthy relationships, there's a natural phenomenon called neural mirroring. When you laugh, others laugh. When you share pain, others offer genuine empathy. This is how human beings bond, through the mirror neurons that create resonance between souls. But when an Archon is present, this mirroring system breaks down in specific, observable ways. Tell someone under Archonic influence about a profound pain you're experiencing and watch their response carefully. Instead of meeting you in that vulnerable space, they'll minimize your experience, redirect the conversation to their own suffering, or offer advice that completely misses the emotional truth of what you shared. The philosopher Plotinus, who battled Archonic entities in the 3rd century, wrote extensively about how these beings lack authentic empathy. They can simulate concern, but it's hollow, mechanical. You'll feel it in your body, a kind of loneliness that emerges even in their presence, perhaps especially in their presence. The Persian mystic Rumi spoke of this when he wrote, "Some humans are more absent than the dead." He was speaking about Archonic occupation, the phenomenon of looking into someone's eyes and finding nobody truly home. But here's the critical distinction Jesus emphasized. The person themselves is not the enemy. The Archon is the enemy. Your loved one is under siege, their consciousness dimmed by a parasitic overlay that feeds on low-frequency emotions. In the hypostasis of the Archons, it's written that these entities take bodies, changing from form to form, meaning they move between hosts, seeking always the path of least resistance. Someone who is exhausted, traumatized, addicted, or spiritually asleep becomes an easy target. And once attached, the Archon works tirelessly to keep that person from awakening, because an awakened human can expel these entities simply by raising their frequency beyond the Archon's ability to attach. The 4th sign is what the Gnostic texts refer to as the theft of time and timing. This is extraordinarily precise, and once you recognize it, you'll see it operating everywhere. Notice how certain people in your life have an uncanny ability to interrupt you at exactly the moment you're about to make a breakthrough. You're meditating deeply, accessing higher states of consciousness, and suddenly they need you urgently for something trivial. You're about to make a life-changing decision that would free you from limitation, and they arrive with a crisis that demands your immediate attention and energy. You've set aside sacred time for your spiritual practice, your creative work, your soul's mission, and they somehow always intrude during precisely those windows. This is not coincidence. The Archons exist outside linear time in a way that allows them to sense energetic buildups, those moments when a soul is about to quantum leap into a new level of awareness. In the secret book of John, Jesus describes how the Archons can perceive the light movements of awakening souls and position obstacles accordingly. Your family member or friend doesn't consciously know they're being used this way. They genuinely believe their interruption is justified, that their need is urgent. But if you track the pattern over weeks and months, you'll notice the timing is impossibly consistent. Every significant moment of your expansion is met with their contraction, their emergency, their demand for your light. The ancient mystery schools taught initiates to guard their timing as fiercely as they guarded their energy. Pythagoras wouldn't accept students who couldn't maintain sacred boundaries around their practice time. He understood that the forces of resistance don't attack randomly. They attack strategically at the threshold moments when transformation is imminent. When someone in your life consistently violates your sacred timing, when they seem allergic to your schedule of self-development, when they experience mysterious crises every time you're about to level up, you're witnessing Archonic interference, the parasitic entity ensuring its host remains entangled with you, draining the very energy you're trying to accumulate for your ascension. The fifth and most revealing sign is what Jesus called the reversal of sacrifice. This is devastatingly common and perhaps the most painful to recognize. It works like this. You sacrifice for someone repeatedly: your time, your money, your energy, your opportunities. You show up for them in their darkest hours. You carry them through their storms. And then, the one time you need them, the one moment you ask for reciprocity, they are suddenly unavailable, offended, or they reframe your request as unreasonable. More than that, they seem to have completely forgotten every sacrifice you made, as if those acts of love never existed. This isn't human forgetfulness or even garden variety selfishness. The Archons have no capacity for gratitude because gratitude is a high-frequency emotion that requires acknowledgement of interconnection, of debt, of love given and received. In the Pistis Sophia, Jesus explains that the Archons are without gratitude by their very nature. They take endlessly but cannot recognize what they've been given. When someone operates from this Archonic overlay, they genuinely cannot see your sacrifices. The entity has created a perceptual filter that allows them to receive your light while remaining convinced they're entitled to it, that it costs you nothing, that you owe them even more. Watch what happens when you finally establish a boundary with such a person. When you say no to a request after years of saying yes, when you stop being available for their emotional dumping, when you prioritize your own needs for once, they respond with shock, rage, or emotional manipulation. They accuse you of abandonment, of selfishness, of changing into someone they don't recognize. This is the Archon speaking, furious that its food source is being cut off. The entity has trained your loved one to believe that your purpose is to serve them, and any deviation from that role is perceived as betrayal. But here's the deeper layer that Jesus taught only to those with ears to hear. These 5 signs don't just reveal Archonic influence in others, they reveal the quality of your own light. The brighter you shine, the more these entities will use your loved ones to dim you. The closer you get to remembering your true divine nature, the more aggressively the Archons will work through your family to keep you asleep. The Gospel of Truth states, "Ignorance of the Father brought about terror and fear, and terror became dense like a fog, so no one was able to see. The Archons are that fog, and they thicken it using the people you trust most." This is why Jesus told his disciples, "I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother." He wasn't advocating for family division. He was warning that the path of awakening will reveal who in your life is genuinely aligned with your soul's liberation, and who has become a vessel for forces that seek your continued imprisonment. The Nag Hammadi text, The Testimony of Truth, makes this explicit. The Archons wanted to deceive humanity because they saw that humanity had kinship with those that are truly good. Your family ties, your blood bonds, your history with someone, none of these immunize them from being used as instruments of your spiritual suppression. And yet, Jesus also taught compassion alongside discernment. These people are not villains in your story. They are themselves victims, possessed by entities they don't have the awareness to recognize or resist. The goal is not to condemn them, but to see clearly, to protect your light, and when possible, to become so radiant that your frequency either expels the Archon or forces the possessed person away from you naturally because they can no longer tolerate the intensity of your truth. Now that you can recognize these 5 signs, the question becomes, what do you actually do when you identify Archonic influence in someone you love? Jesus didn't just give his chosen ones diagnostic tools. He gave them a precise protocol for protection, discernment, and in some cases, liberation. This is where ancient wisdom becomes practical power in your everyday life. The first technique is what the Gnostics called the sealing of the aura. Every morning, before you interact with anyone, especially those you suspect carry Archonic attachments, you must fortify your energetic boundaries. Sit in silence for just 5 minutes. Visualize a sphere of brilliant white light surrounding your entire body, extending about 3 feet in all directions. But here's the critical part that most people miss. This isn't just passive visualization. You must charge this sphere with a specific intention, spoken aloud or firmly in your mind. I am a sovereign being of divine light. No entity, seen or unseen, may feed upon my energy without my conscious permission. I revoke all contracts, all agreements, all entanglements that do not serve my highest evolution. The Archons operate through implied consent. By explicitly revoking that consent daily, you close the doorways through which they access you through others. In the Pistis Sophia, Jesus teaches Sophia a protective invocation that translates to this. When you feel the draining sensation in someone's presence, when you notice one of the 5 signs activating, immediately and silently recite in your mind, I recognize you. You have no power here. I call upon the light of the true God to surround this interaction. You don't need to say this out loud. The Archons operate in the realm of thought and intention. Your silent assertion of sovereignty creates an energetic disruption that often causes the possessed person to suddenly change the subject, leave the room, or break the interaction. They won't know why. They'll just feel uncomfortable. This is the Archon retreating from direct confrontation with awakened awareness. The second practice is radical honesty through what I call the mirror technique. When someone displays Archonic behavior, draining your joy, looping conversations, failing to reciprocate, don't remain silent hoping it will change. Instead, become a mirror that reflects their behavior back to them with compassionate clarity. For example, I notice that every time I share good news with you, the conversation quickly shifts to problems. I'm curious about that pattern. Have you noticed it? This isn't accusation. It's observation. What you're doing is forcing the conscious mind of the person to witness their own Archonic programming. Most of the time, they'll deny it, deflect, or become defensive. That's the Archon protecting itself. But you've planted a seed of awareness that may germinate later, and more importantly, you've refused to participate in the unconscious dance the entity requires. The mystery schools of Egypt taught initiates never to feed the Archons through reaction. When someone tries to drain your joy, if you become sad, angry, or defensive, you've given the entity exactly what it wanted: low-frequency emotional energy. Instead, maintain what the Buddhists call equanimity and what Jesus called being wise as serpents. You observe, you note the pattern, you speak your truth calmly, and you detach from the outcome. This energetic neutrality starves the Archon while preserving your light. The third technique is strategic distance, but it must be done consciously, not reactively. The Gospel of Thomas records Jesus saying, "Blessed is the lion which becomes man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes, and the lion becomes man." This cryptic saying refers to the relationship between the awakened soul and the archonic forces. You must consume the experience, extract the lesson, the discernment, the wisdom, without allowing the experience to consume you, to pull you back into unconsciousness. Practically, this means you may need to limit contact with archonically influenced people, not out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. You can love someone from a distance. You can honor the relationship without being available for constant energy extraction. Create what I call containment visits. If you must interact with someone who displays these signs, set firm time boundaries. I can visit for 1 hour. I can talk for 20 minutes. Before the interaction, seal your aura. During the interaction, monitor your energy levels. The moment you feel the drain beginning, the moment you notice the signs activating, you honor your boundary and leave. No explanation needed beyond, "I need to go now." Over time, either the person will become curious about your newfound boundaries and begin their own awakening, or they'll naturally distance themselves from you because the Archon can no longer feed. Either outcome serves your liberation. The fourth practice is the most advanced, energetic exorcism through frequency elevation. You cannot cast out an Archon through force or confrontation, that only feeds it. But you can raise your own frequency so high in someone's presence that the entity becomes uncomfortable and loosens its grip. This is done through what the Christian mystics called practiced presence of the divine. When you're with someone you suspect is archonically influenced, instead of engaging with their drama, their complaints, their energy-draining behaviors, you maintain an internal focus on the divine. Silently pray, recite sacred verses, visualize light pouring through your heart. What you're doing is creating such a strong field of high-frequency energy that the low-frequency entity cannot maintain its attachment. Sometimes this results in the person suddenly feeling ill, needing to leave, or even experiencing a spontaneous breakthrough where they momentarily wake up and speak with unusual clarity and love. That's the real person emerging as the Archon retreats. Finally, remember what Jesus emphasized most. You cannot save anyone who doesn't want to be saved. Your job is not to rescue people from archonic possession. Your job is to embody so much light that you become a living invitation to awakening. Some will accept that invitation. Most will not. The Gnostic text, the Gospel of Truth, teaches, "Each one will receive what is his and will draw it to himself." Focus on your own liberation first. As you rise, you create an energetic vacuum that naturally pulls others upward, but only those who are ready. Release yourself from the burden of trying to awaken the sleeping. Shine so brightly that those with eyes to see will find their way to you, and those who prefer darkness will remove themselves from your path. You now possess knowledge that was deemed too dangerous for the masses, wisdom that emperors tried to bury, and that Archons have worked for millennia to keep from reaching awakening souls like yours. These 5 signs, the reversal of joy, the conversation loop of nowhere, the mirroring malfunction, the theft of time and timing, and the reversal of sacrifice, are not abstract theories. They are diagnostic tools that Jesus himself taught to those he knew could handle the weight of truth without collapsing into despair or hatred. Understand this. Recognizing archonic influence in your friends and family is not the end of love. It is the beginning of real love, the kind that sees clearly and still chooses compassion. The person wearing your mother's face, your spouse's smile, your best friend's voice. They are still in there, beneath the overlay, waiting for enough light to break through the fog. But you cannot save them by dimming your own light. You cannot liberate them by remaining in chains yourself. The most loving thing you can do is become so free, so radiant, so unshakably anchored in your divine nature that you become living proof that liberation is possible. The path forward is not easy. There will be relationships that cannot survive your awakening. There will be people you love who will choose the comfort of sleep over the terror of truth. Jesus knew this when he said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house." Your own family may become your greatest opposition, not because they are evil, but because the forces working through them recognize you as a threat to the entire system of control. Let them go if they must go. Grieve if you must grieve. But do not, under any circumstances, sacrifice your awakening to maintain relationships that require your unconsciousness as the price of admission. Every time you practice these techniques, sealing your aura, speaking your truth, maintaining boundaries, elevating your frequency, you are not just protecting yourself. You are weakening the Archonic grip on this entire realm. These entities feed on collective unconsciousness. Every soul that awakens, every chosen one who learns to see clearly and stand in sovereign light, diminishes the food source that keeps the Archons in power. You are not just saving yourself. You are participating in the liberation of humanity itself. The Gnostic teacher Valentinus taught that the world is sustained by the sleeping souls who don't know they're asleep. The moment enough of us wake up, recognize the parasites, and withdraw our consent from the system, the entire matrix of control collapses. This is why your awakening matters. This is why the Archons fight so hard to keep you small, distracted, and entangled with people who drain your light. You are more powerful than you've been allowed to remember. So I leave you with the same charge Jesus gave to his disciples in the Gospel of Thomas. If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. Bring forth your light. Bring forth your discernment. Bring forth your sovereign refusal to be food for entities that exist only because we forgot we are divine. The Archons can't hide anymore, not from you. You see them now, and once you see, you can never unsee. Use that sight wisely, use it lovingly, but above all, use it to reclaim the freedom that has always been your birthright. If this knowledge resonated with something deep in your soul, if you felt the truth of it in your bones, share this video with another chosen one who needs to hear it. And remember, the war is not against flesh and blood. The war is for consciousness itself. Choose your side, protect your light, and never ever apologize for shining so brightly that the darkness has nowhere left to hide.